Did you say loud?
Too loud.
Too loud. Too loud. Let's get loud.
We should get some ideas from the chat. What should we do for our intro?
Ooh. So we can replace the black screen?
Yeah, just a boring countdown. What if we need to pizzazz it up?
I like pizzazz.
You like pizzazz?
Yeah, let's pizzazz it up.
I like pizza.
You like pizza? I ate pizza last night.
I put the pizza in pizzazz. That was really dumb. I'm sorry. That was really stupid.
That was pretty good. Very clever.
It's about as far as it goes.
Sammi, you're going to try some new stuff tonight. Some behind-the-scenes screen switcheroos, and it's going to be so exciting for everybody watching.
Yeah, I'm going to really keep y'all's attention span with just flashing neon lights and just kidding.
Uh-oh, chat's already getting crazy.
Uh-oh.
This is going to be a good one. And a nice tight episode. That's how I like it.
Yeah, it's going to be quick. It's going to go by fast.
Probably will. It's crazy down here. It's been, we were in the 90s, and then the next day it was in the 40s. Now it's back in the 70s.
Moody.
Yeah, we got moody weather.
Ooh. Yeah.
Oh my God, we did it again.
Welcome.
I'm proud of us. We keep pulling it off week to week.
That clap sound really just ends so abruptly.
Yeah, it's not like a fade out.
No, I don't. We're going to have to switch that up. Hello, everyone. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. We have a very special guest today.
We do, and I want to get it. Let's get straight into it because we only have an hour today, and I want to make the most of it because I think this guest is way overdue for coming on. So I'm happy to have him, and he's joining us in a bunch of different stuff that we've got going on. Some cool things coming on this year, but I also want to hear about the last year that he's had. It's been pretty cool too. So let's bring on our guest, Luke Caverns.
What?
Hello.
Oh.
Welcome.
What is up, man? You survived. You survived the great storm of 2026.
I survived the great storm, man. Yeah, I was still. Well, for everybody listening, we were under a tornado watch here yesterday. Yeah. Winds were howling, so I made it through.
Yeah, it sounded like I looked up the weather after you told me, and it looked like it was getting crazy up there. But I'm glad nothing bad happened. You guys had a shelter-in-place warning, huh?
Yeah, nothing bad happened to me, but there were plenty of sirens going around. So somebody got messed up around here.
Somebody got touched by the weather gods.
Yeah, but man, I'm glad to finally be on your show. Like you said, it's long overdue.
Way overdue, yeah. And it's been great to catch up. We've been talking a lot recently, and you know what? Let me start off. We got a bunch of cool things that we're going to announce today, but what I was hoping you tell me a little bit about the last year that you've had, because 2025 was pretty kick ass for you, man. How would you sum up last year for you?
Last year was when I first started this journey. Last year was what I was looking for, if that makes sense. Yeah. Last year was all the things that I had hoped would happen. Just kind of. So I quit my job finally in late 2024. And then, was completely dirt broke trying to make it work. And last year, things finally got to like a level where I'm actually comfortable and I can live and I can do my job and do this full time. I was traveled all the way around the world like 3 times in a year, and went to Egypt a couple times, and got to see Asia, and went to Mexico I don't know how many times, and South America. Got to finally somehow ended up on Rogan, and I don't know, man. It's just like everything that I wanted to happen when I first started this journey happened last year, and now all of a sudden here I am this year, and I'm like, okay, well, what am I going to do? And I'm just lucky and blessed, and I just I don't know, man.
Well,
It's
it was really cool watching all that happen for you and cheering you on in your successes. The Rogan thing was amazing, and you crushed it on that
no,
episode.
thank you, man. I appreciate that.
And then, of course, I love seeing you because it's what I love doing. I love seeing you get around the world and travel to all these places
Yeah,
and cool places because it changes you.
hmm
That
And
experience.
that's something I was telling you. I've always respected that about you a lot. I mean, um, when you're in this ancient history space, it means everything to have actually been there and see the places that you talk about.
Yeah.
It means everything. Like, it is very difficult to be able to talk about an ancient culture or an ancient site that you haven't been to, and it gives you a whole new perspective once you've been there. And even on a philosophical, intellectual level, it changes you when you've traveled so much. Your perception of the world around you,
Yeah.
and even the appreciation for the place that you come from, is
Yes.
far enhanced, and it just means so much. Like, I just respect how much you've traveled and how much, and it's expensive, right? Like you put everything into
Yes.
it to be
Yeah.
able to see the world, and so it like commands respect, and I've always really admired you for that.
Oh, thank you, man. Yeah, and I love what you just said because that's always been something that stuck out to me is it changes your perception of the world, but not just the world, but where you came from. So when you saying that is very poignant because it really makes you kind of recognize how good we have it here in America and be grateful for like the opportunities and things that we have here to
Yeah.
be able to like kind of forge your own path. That's a possibility. So congratulations, man. That's so cool to hear that journey of 24 stepping in. I remember you posting about it and leaving the job and workplace and then stepping into this the realm of pursuing your passion
Yeah.
and then having it be successful the way it has. So just bravo, man. Really, really,
Yeah.
yeah.
I really
Yeah,
appreciate it.
it's hard work. What did you do for work before you went full time doing what you're doing?
I was working in advertising, and so I had gotten my degree in anthropology, but without a PhD in anthropology, there's no jobs unless I want to be like a civil archaeologist, and before they lay down a road, I go excavate the road, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
But that paid a measly amount. That would have paid a measly amount. So I got a slightly less measly job, and working in advertising, and I was working for like liquor companies, making whiskey, bourbon, that kind of stuff, making advertising for them. And I liked the job, but the whole time I was plotting, scheming, trying to get my company going, and yeah. So, anyways, yeah, that's what I was doing beforehand, and that's kind of all those skills that I learned at that job actually did translate to doing this because I was able to, make my own thumbnails and edit my own videos,
Yeah,
that kind of
I
stuff.
was gonna say like that sounds like it translates really well. I kind of relate a little bit because I did social media and like graphic design marketing stuff for just a local distillery that like specialized in whiskey and vodka for like
Yeah,
a
yeah.
little over a year. So, but yeah, all of that like helps build a foundation for making your own content and
Yeah.
marketing yourself.
And the most important thing that happened was the mustache came into your life.
Mustache came in. Yeah.
It's a good look.
Oh, well, thank you, man.
Yeah, it's a good look, man.
Thank you. What's funny is I've never said this publicly. My wife and I were watching 1923, And anytime Spencer Dutton would come on screen, she'd look at me. I don't know if you guys have watched that show, but anytime Spencer Dutton would come on screen, she'd like look at me and she'd go, you know, it's like every time he came on screen, I was like, you know what? Maybe I should grow the mustache out.
There you go.
Mustache and yeah, I feel like it's, you know, when I was going through the ringer with History Channel and we were trying to do a show that was going to compete against Expedition Unknown, like Josh Gates thing, the thing that they told me was that I was too young, and so I couldn't host my own show. So I was like,
really?
You know, if I grow a mustache, I'll look a little bit more distinguisget. So yeah.
It works. Hey man, not everybody. I can't pull it off. It's got to be the beard or nothing, because I get
if you were mustache, you would look like a Wild West, like Texas Ranger.
it's I've tried it before. It's not a great look, and yeah, we stick with the beard over here. But
yeah.
So 2026, man, is what's that?
Oh, I was gonna say, you know, really I think the most important thing that happened last year was what you and I were talking about. You know, for a long time, I felt like I was really heavily influenced by the people around me, which is what happens early on, right? Like you're trying to get your bearings of the space that you step into, right? So
sure.
When I first start making videos, you walk through every door that opens up to you. You take every opportunity, and it's hard to. It takes a long time to find your own identity, and so you know, I have close relationships with academics and close relationships with people who are independent, and I felt like some of my relationships were almost like too close, too looming over me. And so, you know, I had a lot of academics in my ear that were like, you know, you should really think about specializing. You should really think about going back to school. It'd be really cool to be Professor Luke or Dr. Luke or something. And when that's all you hear all the time, you start thinking like, okay, well, you know, what am I going to do? And the Greeks were always my first love, as we're about to get to. And I was like, well, you know, something that can be infinitely studied and is relevant to me and important to me. You know, the movie Troy and the Iliad and the Odyssey, that's the reason I love the ancient world. You know, I memorized every fight scene in the movie Troy when I was like 7 years old. And so I thought, well, you know,
dude, you're like aging me on that one, because
well, so, you know, I just I was like, you know, the Greek world is infinitely relevant, and it's infinitely deep, right? We know just enough about the Greek world to be able to study it just at an endless depth. And so I thought about specializing, go back to school, and then the day I was going to pay the tuition to basically like commit to, you know, studying the Greeks, I just felt like I was deeply betraying my bloodline. Actually, I felt like I was betraying my grandpa, who was an explorer of the Gila Wilderness, which I just came back from. I felt like I was betraying my great grandparents that were explorers in like Southwest Texas along the Rio Grande, and I felt like I was turning my back on Dr. Barnhart, who had studied with so much in Mexico and Central America, and you know, the American world that's opened itself up to me. And I just had this like guilt, and I had prayed about it, and I was like, God, I can't make this decision on my own. You got to make this overwhelmingly clear to me what I need to do. And the morning I was supposed to pay that tuition, I felt super guilty about it, and I was like, I can't do it.
Trusted your gut.
Yeah, and then the next thing from that was all the people around you. You need to keep them around you and appreciate them, but just at arm's distance. You need to be you. And I figured that out right before I went on Rogan. It was like one of those few times in life where God's like, all right, I'm just going to take care of this for you, you know, and like casts a spell in your brain and fixes your brain chemistry so you can approach this correctly. And that was the best thing that happened last year was I figured out me. And it was really like when I first started this, I was enamored like a deer in the headlights with all the ancient cultures around the world, or at least various different ancient cultures around the world. And I wanted to be an explorer of the ancient world in general, whether that's here in North America amongst the mound builders, or in the American Southwest, the jungles of Mexico, Central America, South America, or whether it's, the deserts in Egypt or Greece. Those are really the places I'm interested in. I realized that was always my spirit from the very beginning, but I didn't have the knowledge 8 years ago or so when it started turning over in my mind, like, how am I going to do this?
Yeah.
Well, 7 years later, I had acquired that knowledge. I had gone to school, I had studied intensely. And now that I had reached this point, it was time to go back to the spirit that I had at the very beginning and get that essence again of doing it all. But now I have the wisdom and the education and the approach to be able to do it the right way. And so I just went back to that, whatever that spirit was that, like, God gave me in the beginning. And so that was the best thing that happened last year.
I think that's really awesome, and it's relatable for a lot of people in the spaces here. I know for Sammi, because I know Sammy's story, my story, and different things is choosing to follow your passion, right? And it's a big leap of faith, because you really are exchanging in a lot of senses freedom for security. When you pursue your passion, you're a lot of times there isn't the security that maybe comes with like a 9-to-5 job or career.
Yeah, true.
And so you have to forge that path on your own. And so it really takes a lot of belief in yourself and what you're feeling you're called to do.
Mm-hmm.
And it can take a lot to listen to that voice and step out and take action on that voice and that thing that's inside of you. So bravo to you, man. Hats off to you for doing that. And you choosing to do that has obviously only been the right path by it's clear that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. Well, I really appreciate that, man.
Yeah, absolutely. So Greece, man. Yeah, I'm sorry,
Greece.
Sammi, go ahead, please.
I was just going to say, I think it's like a sign when things are starting to work out that you're going in the right direction. But the hardest part is, given just the infinite possibilities that we have for our life, to find out what that is. And like listening to your gut and listening to your intuition, I think is like there's no other way to do that. And just knowing, following the signs and, I don't know, the synchronicities and everything.
You have to. I mean,
you have no idea what's going to come in any situation,
what's so cool is I haven't found the right way to put this into words, but when I was planning the Gila wilderness expedition that we just got back from, I was originally there back in November. And what's funny is Mike, I think, like, you, me, and Will, we had all incredible history. We had talked about doing trips to Colombia, and then that didn't work out. And then so Will and I were going to do a Southwest trip, and I brought one of my friends with me, and then Will wasn't able to go on that. So then we're in the Southwest, and we're like, okay, well, we're just going to go to Chocolate Canyon ourselves, whatever. The government shutdown happens. All the archaeological sites close. So I'm in Albuquerque, New Mexico for 9 days. Everything that we wanted to do was none of it worked out. So we decide to go check out. I decided to take my buddy Nick to my grandfather's, the area that he explored in the far south Gila wilderness, where I can't give away too much, but I decided to take him out there, and we were going to camp out there. And while we were there, we visited the Mogollon cliff dwellings. And so we're there. There's no one there, but it's open, and there's like volunteers. There's like 1 or 2 volunteers, park rangers working at the gates, but there's nobody there. Anyway, I tell my friend Nick, I'm like, you know what? I bet you there's cliff dwellings and stuff around here, because this place really is overlooked in the Southwest. I feel like we could do something here. And I was like, if only like we could meet a local park ranger that lived here or something, and learn, really get the inside scoop of how this place operates. 1 minute later, a white truck pulls up, and it's this old man, and it's the dude I just told Nick that I wish that we could meet. And he pulls up, and we're talking to him, and I take a look at Nick, and he looks at me. And in my mind, I was like, you know what? People talk about how they show up, they show up to meet the muse, and the muse meets them. Well, the muse is God, it's the universe, it's the mind behind everything that pushes life forward, right? And if you just show up and just follow that instinct, the world will just open up right in front of you. My entire life has been like that.
Yeah,
and
me too.
It's just like I walk in faith, you know, and then it's just boom, it's there. You know, everything I need is just provided right in front of me. All I do is arrive and take the risk to arrive, right? You know, there's all that as well. But anywho, getting to Greece,
Well, real quick, it's interesting that you say that, because it's an attitude to be, there's really is an attitude to traveling that is required to be successful at it, you know, like, because you'll show up to, it's happened to me, you know. I went all the way over to China, and one of the biggest things that I wanted to do over there was there's this tiny little boarded path that goes around a cliff face. It's like one of the most dangerous walks in the world or something, you know, and I wanted to do that and film it, you know, and this was at the time when I just started, and I thought it'd be great for content. And I get there and it's closed, right? So I don't get to do it. And you can be upset in these moments when things like that happen. Or you can say that this wasn't, it's an attitude that you can have.
Yeah.
And start looking for the other opportunity that's actually supposed to be presenting itself there. And because that thing was closed, I was able to walk to these other peaks. I was on these 5 sacred peaks of China, and had this incredible experience just sitting on top of a peak with monks chanting in the background, watching a sunset. It's a moment that I'll never forget for the rest of my life. It was one of the most beautiful moments I've ever had. And if you're open to that, you'll have these things happen on the backs of what you could choose to see as like this failure and disappointment or whatever. And, oh, I don't know, let's just go back to the hotel room. And, you know, but yeah, you know, there's always these opportunities that are unexpected if you're just willing to be open to the experience and look at things, like you said, as kind of like this guiding. Things happen for a reason, and you know. So yeah, with Greece, I was going to ask you. You know, it seems like you've clearly had an interest in Greece.
Yeah.
Forever. You just explained a lot of that. You chose to try to go to school there. That was in Greece that you applied to, right? And so, and then, but you haven't been yet.
I haven't been. No, I just, well, I mean, yeah, I just haven't been. But I'm quite excited to go later this year. But yeah, man, my fascination with you know what's funny is you don't usually remember when your fascination with something began. But I actually remember the moment that my fascination with the ancient world began. And I'm just realizing that right now. So my parents had this like projector room. My dad is obsessed with watching movies.
Yeah.
And he should have been a movie critic or something. But we had this projector room, and it had these 2 like wooden panel glass doors that could shut it, and they were kind of soundproof. And my parents had over some of their friends, and they were going to watch this really good movie that had just come out on DVD. This must be 2005. And so I hear, you know, I don't know what they're doing, but all of a sudden there's this really loud scene, and the subwoofers would kind of like vibrate. You could hear the doors sort of rattle. And sometimes, you know, when it's really loud, you, as a 6 or 7 or maybe an 8-year-old, I'll go over there and see what it is. And I see these 2 armies like running at each other and, you know, smashing their shields and spears against each other and crashing together. And so I open it and I walk in, And I'm like, Dad, what are y'all watching? And my dad's like, oh, you don't need to watch this here. Okay, go watch whatever you're watching. And so I leave, and they, there's like nudity and stuff in the movie. They didn't want me to see all that.
Yeah.
And so I sit down on the floor through the glass panel, and I can like barely hear anything. And I watch that entire movie sitting on the floor in the hallway. And whatever I witnessed then just grabbed a hold of me and never let go.
Put a spark in you, huh?
Yeah, and I was literally obsessed with that movie. I have watched that movie hundreds of times. I've watched the scenes hundreds of times. I know every word of that movie. I know every sound effect, every musical cue. I know everything about that movie.
Wait, what? So this is Troy?
This is Troy. Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
I'm sorry, I didn't say that. Yeah, this is Troy. I know. When you go watch the fight scenes of those movies on YouTube and you see like they have millions of views, I have watched all of those scenes more times than anybody on the internet. That's a guarantee. That's a guarantee.
I love those scenes. When they pop up in my feed, I watch. What's your favorite fight scene in that movie? It's Achilles is in the fight scene, whatever it is.
Yeah. Right? Actually, Boagrius, when Agamemnon goes, when he goes, of all the warlords loved by the gods, I hate him the most. And then he goes, shing, and then Boagrius turns around, and he goes, ah, ah, and then he starts jogging towards him, and you hear the music come up, music come on, and it's like you got this guy who's he looks like a normal man, and he's about to go slay this beast, and it's your introduction to Achilles, right?
Right.
I just think that's something about that, and the music's not over the top; it's just real kind of low, and I don't know, man. It just that movie.
And then they drop it back out when he continues forward past him and stands in front of the other army, calling them out.
Yeah, man, I loved that, and it just captivated my imagination. So my parents, my mom is very Christian, and like a preacher's daughter, so they wanted me in like a Christian school growing up or whatever. I got kicked out of the school because I would bring my sword to school and I would reenact the fight scenes and like kill kids and stuff in the playground. And I got kicked out of.
Dude, if you were growing up right now and nowadays you're like simulating killing kids on the playground, they'd be like.
So I got kicked out of these. I was at this like Christian daycare, and I got kicked out of it because I was too violent, and oh yeah.
So if someone you went to school with were to just come across your channel now, they would be like, yeah, this tracks.
Oh, they have. Yeah. No, I got some guys I've known since grade school. And I'll make a post or something about Troy, and they'll be like, "Classic Luke," or they'll be like, "I bet you still know all the fight scenes." So I was just obsessed with the ancient world from the time I was so young, and that just I guess it's criminal. I haven't been to Greece yet, but
so neither have been. So this is going to be the first time that both of you have been to Greece.
So in case, just in case for the audience, some people, if they don't know, let's pull it up. We're doing a tour to Greece together in November. And we just put this live. This just went live on Sunday.
Get the applause.
Yeah.
Where is it? Can't find it. Too slow. Oh, there we go.
There it
Yay!
Is.
Oh.
There we go. I think this is going to be so sick. So we've got a 7 days tour to Greece in November with Will from Incredible History joining us too. So there'll be 3 of us.
Yeah.
That's going to be so fun.
Athens, Epidaurus, or whatever.
Yeah. This is probably the only time that, if you guys join, this is the only time anybody's going to be somewhere the same time I'm there. You know what I mean? Like on a tour, the same time I'm there for the first time. So everyone going, you're going to see the Acropolis with me for the first time at Athens, Mycenae,
Yep.
Delphi. Oh, it's going to be crazy. It's going to be insane. Like, I just,
Yep.
I don't think that people realize how important. It's funny because the way that things are popular kind of goes up and down, right? Like 100 years ago, the Greeks were the most popular ancient culture. The Greeks and the Romans and the Egyptians were kind of like here. And
Yep.
now it's changed, and the Egyptians are really popular, and less people are interested in the Greeks. But I think people today would be shocked to learn how important the Greek world is, how mysterious it is, and how influential it is. Like the city of Athens and the things that came out of Athens, our society today would not exist without it.
Right.
The free thought, the idea that we can be a free and individual people who rule over ourselves, express our opinions, and
Mhm.
all of that was born in Athens. The very idea of that was, the idea of freedom and individual like liberty was born in Athens and in Greece as a whole. It's just such a. It's
And by the
such a
way, that idea and mindset carried through so many other cultures and systems of government that didn't actually support that type
Yeah.
of thought process. So it stayed within the minds of people
Yeah.
through cultures
Mhm.
and governmental systems and dictatorships and monarchies and all sorts of serfdom and all sorts of different systems until it found its footing again in different, in the world. So, that mindset and everything that was created there carried on.
It really did. It really did. You know what's amazing is Athens. There are so the longest reigning democracy in world history is the United States. I say democracy, and people go constitutional republic. Constitutional republic is a form of democracy. Let's not have the conversation. But the idea of a democracy, I mean, how old is the U.S.? Over 200 years old. But the second longest lasting democracy in all of world history is the Athenian democracy.
Mm.
And we are so closely connected to these people. Our spirit, the way that we express ourselves, the way that we have the freedom to stand in the proverbial Greek theater and criticize our politicians and the people who rule over us directly comes from these guys. They
Mhm.
created
Yeah.
an environment where that was permissible. It's just it's just amazing. And I don't mean to make it like just a political thing, but it's just the idea of taking pride in who you are and having freedom and the philosophy behind that, and to fight and sacrifice and die for that. That was born here, right? There's
Mhm.
and all of the things that come with that. They say that there's no philosophical topics that Aristotle and Plato didn't write about, and that all of human philosophy since then is actually just derivative of those two guys.
Mhm.
That is insane.
That is
Okay,
Mhm.
and that came out of, well, let's call it the Stone Age, and then the Bronze Age and the Iron Age, but all of that like emerged from the ancient world and just appeared in Athens. It didn't exist before that. And I mean, how did the Greeks? It's just crazy. It's
Yeah.
it's an infinitely deep topic. But anyways, yeah, I'm very, very excited to get to Athens.
Same. I think that there's two places, because I've been at so many places that I two places that I haven't been that I just feel like is kind of criminal at this point for me to have not visited, and Greece is one of them. The other is India, but Greece
Hmm.
is up there, which is just like this kind of crazy that I haven't been there. So um getting to go this year and go with friends, and hopefully friends from the comments and viewers and people will join us and
Yeah.
have a big crew. It'll be a lot of fun. And having Will traveling with Will, which I've done through Peru, is a lot of fun as well.
Yeah, he's a great guy.
So it'll be really cool.
What side are you most excited to see?
Oh gosh, I don't know. The idea of just being in Athens is pretty cool to me, and exploring there and having time in the city there. I'm
Yeah.
excited about. Yeah. What about you?
Athens is up there, of course, but also Mycenae. For people watching, so in the Bronze Age, like during the time of Troy, if you like the movie Troy, and nobody really likes Agamemnon, but in the movie Troy, when you see Agamemnon in his home, he's in Mycenae. That's where we're headed to. We're going to Agamemnon's, his palace. And so during the Bronze Age, the Greeks had palaces and fortresses. Like people, we think about Athens as being a classical period city, like an Acropolis or a metropolis. But that city also existed during the Bronze Age, but it was fortified. It had a big wall around it. Mycenae has a big wall around it. And then in the Minoan world on Crete, that's made up of palaces. And so the Greek world was much, much different back then. But Mycenae is such an ancient place. And as far as I know, one of the only places in the Greek world that's built out of huge megalithic stones. You can see that there, like that lintel above that gateway. How looks so similar to what you would see at the top of Machu Picchu. That gateway going into the city of Machu Picchu, just this giant megalithic slabs across the city.
Yeah, it is.
And the Greeks later on. Now, of course, the Greeks have a fertile imagination. They have all kinds of stories and stuff. But there were Greeks who are walking around the ruins of this city 500 years, 1,000 years after it's fallen, and they're looking at the size of the stones, and they've never seen anything like it. They know it comes from this mysterious primordial time, the age of heroes, and they say that giants, had to have built this. That like a cyclops had to, build the city. And of course, not all Greeks believed that, but it just shows how impressive and mysterious this place was. It comes from a time before the time that we imagine the Greeks, right?
Yeah.
And so it's really cool. We get to see these when we're in Athens. We're at like the heart of the classical Greek world, like 450 BC, the age of Pericles, Athenian democracy, the Athenian Empire. We get to the height, Plato, right? Plato is an Athenian. We're going to walk in the footsteps of Plato and Socrates and Aristotle, who came to Athens, the footsteps of Pericles, all these great Greeks. And then we're going to travel to a time that was 700 to 1,000 years before that, during the siege of Troy, a city that existed back then. And so you have this huge span of time that we're going to be covering during this tour. And that's really cool,
Very cool.
Yeah. So Mycenae, I'm excited to see it because it's this incredibly mysterious, interesting Bronze Age site. But then Athens, it's like when you read the sources, check this out.
That's awesome.
This part of traveling is like one of my favorite parts, like having grown up in the West Coast, which is just, everything's just so new, going to these really ancient places and literally exactly what you said. I think I said this when we were in Egypt, like the amount of time that people have been walking in those footsteps and these people that we've heard stories of for our whole lives. And it's such a crazy concept.
Okay. So it's different, right? Like when you study the Egyptian world, you don't know a single thing about the citizens of Egypt, right? They don't care about them. Like it's completely about the pharaoh. It's a little bit about his family, but it's mostly all about the pharaoh. And when you see the pharaoh, all you see is their religious and political propaganda, right? Like they are depicted as semi-divine and eternal beings. This is why Egyptian art does not change for 3,000 years. When the pharaoh is depicted as him smiting his enemy, you will see that from, I forget, who's that start with? It starts sometime way early in the Old Kingdom, but I forget the first pharaoh. Maybe somebody can look it up and leave it in chat. But you see him smiting his enemy. Oh, it's Narmer. It's the first pharaoh. That's who you see it. He's smiting his enemy on the Narmer palette. It's a slate palette from 3100 BC. He's smiting his enemy. Not Cleopatra, but the Ptolemies, which are her ancestors from 300 BC to like 31 BC. The Ptolemies depict themselves in exactly the same way. And while the art style changes like just microscopically, it stays exactly the same because the Egyptians didn't care about art. They didn't care about artistic innovation. Art was a representation of the divine world and it wasn't meant to change, right? And so it was all about the pharaoh and the gods. And that's it. And so you never hear about normal people, but the Greeks cared about normal people because they didn't like being ruled by kings. That's why Athens was so cool. So you read the sources, Plutarch, The Rise and Fall of Athens, which it's not actually what the book was called, but it's just profiles of people who lived in Athens. And then you've got Thucydides, the Peloponnesian War, and so many others. But so Plutarch will tell you about actual people who lived in Athens and tell you about real scenes that happened in Athens. And we're going to walk there and stand right there. We're going to read about something that happened 2,500 years ago, a conversation that took place, and we're going to stand exactly where it took place. It's crazy.
It's crazy.
It's
so crazy.
You know, okay, here's another thing that's really cool. When you go to Egypt, all you see is the temples and the tombs. That's it. You see the stuff that was intended for the people who are more important than civilians. But the Athenians cared about the civilians, the public architecture, the glorification of the city itself and the people inside it was the only important thing. So it's you get to have a personal relationship with an ancient civilization that directly inspired the way you think. Whether you know that or not, you think like an Athenian specifically because of how great their philosophy was and how great their approach to the world was. And you get to stand where your thought process was born, right? And so the way Athens worked was, so in the Roman world, the Romans cared a lot about self-glorification. Like you would walk into a Roman house and there'd be a little cupboard to the side and you'd open it up and you'd see these clay models of your ancestors' masks. And it's about the glorification of your family. And that did exist in the Athenian world, but it was about the glorification of yourself and your own wealth. So your house would be really elaborate so you could bring people over and show how rich you were. But Athenians weren't that way. We don't find super rich Athenian houses. What we do find is that the public architecture was the important thing, and that was extremely glamorous and extremely pristine, and a lot of money was invested into it. So an Athenian would wake up, you'd go out into the marketplace called the Agora, and you'd have these long public buildings. There's one called the Stoa, which we're going to go see. And that's where all the wannabe philosophers, or like the different cliques of philosophers, they'd all go hang out there. And the most important ones, well, the ones that kind of took over the Stoa, they called them the Stoics. That's where we get the term the Stoics from. And the philosophy that formed, yeah, the philosophy that formed inside that, where we could say, oh, that guy's very stoic. He's very in control of his emotions. Well, they didn't call themselves Stoics. Other people nicknamed them that because the people that believed in that kind of behavior and approach to life hung out mostly in the Stoa. So if you wanted to hear about that philosophy, you go hang out under the awning of the Stoa. And so we can walk around Athens and stand exactly, you can know the context of the exact place you're standing. And you can't do that anywhere else in the ancient world. I mean, you can a little bit in Rome, but in the Greek world, we get like scenes, you know. I can take you guys to the Agora and to the Stoa, and we can stand at the Acropolis, and I can tell you what happened right here. It's just
That's
wild,
awesome.
you know, about normal people.
It's cool. I'm almost imagining like nerd debate teams gangs that are just like
Yes.
hanging out on corners talking shit like this is my
Yes.
block.
Yes. Like,
No, we represent stoicism over here. Y'all better move on down the street. You know?
yeah. You know, you've probably had the Stoics who are talking shit about the Aristotelians, you know, and being like,
Yeah.
heard what the guys who listen to Aristotle talk about. Like, Aristotle, he's so full of himself, you know. You can go, you know, people don't realize this. We exalt Socrates as this great mind, which he was, but really he was just a smelly hobo as well. He was, as much as he was a great mind, right? He was so deep in his philosophy that he had like thought himself out of caring about his personal hygiene and how much money he had, almost like to the point of a Christ disciple, right? Like he had ascended beyond the material realm, and so he was just a dirty hobo.
Yeah.
And, just wandering around.
Yeah, just wandering around. I think he really did have a home, but a lot of times he would like sleep on the street. I'm not 100% certain, but you know, it was well known in Athens. Like you'd be standing in line at the market trying to buy meat or something like that, because everybody would meet in the Agora. You would know the people around town. Everybody. I try to do this today, actually. I purposely do not buy the week's groceries because I like going to the grocery store, because it's just, my grocery store is as far from my house as the marketplace would be from an Athenian's house. So I could walk there, but I just drive. And I like going into the grocery store, and like I know the people who work there. I like going into the produce and the meat and getting, you know, whenever I eat dinner, I bought those groceries that day. That's what an Athenian would do. Except everybody you know is doing the same thing, right? So
you were saying every day you buy what you need.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
And so that's how it would go in the Athenian world as well. So you see everybody you know every day, right? So you're standing there. So you're standing there in line trying to check out with, you know, you picked up these apples and grapes and olives or whatever, bread, whatever, and you're holding it all there. And then you got this guy taps you on your shoulder, and you look over, and it's this smelly hobo named Socrates who's going to now interrogate you about philosophy and see if you've actually thought deeply about anything in your life. And this is a well-known thing in Athens that, you know, people will be like, oh God.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit here and listen to Socrates ramble on and on and on and on.
I meet guys like that downtown. If I go downtown here in Austin, certain parts, you know.
And that's probably
it's interesting what you're saying, because you're just trying to do your daily life things.
Yeah.
And because Socrates and whoever else, they're not, you know, they're big, but you're just trying to do your daily routine, you know. Exactly. You don't know that you're listening to stuff that we'll be talking about, you know, however many, you know, years later down the road, and shaping societies and stuff. So it's funny. It's Socrates is here.
It's amazing. And you know what's funny about Socrates, not to derail this and make this about him, but you know, the only reason that we know about him is because, you know, people who grew up with Socrates didn't really care about what he had to say. Maybe even people who are a little bit younger than him. But the young people who were maybe teenagers in their 20s when he's an old man, they're invested in what he has to say. You know, maybe they're more easily influenced. Whatever it is, maybe they're more open to listening to this old guy, you know, talk. And so Plato is one of those guys. And ultimately Socrates is put to death for the corruption of the youth and suggesting that the Greek gods are not real. Because he would say something like, he said, you know, I don't really know if the Greek gods if the gods are real. If they are, they're somewhere far away and they're not invested in what you and I do. And he was, and a lot of the youngsters started believing that in Athens as well. And so the Athenian government was like, I don't think we're going to let this happen. So they killed him.
Well, didn't he have like a pretty like expanded on hermetic view of the world, like mind over matter, like, or he like at least debated the concept of is reality created by mind first or matter first, and didn't really cling to one or the other. Like he just
right. I could be wrong. I think the word for that is logos. That he believed that there was a mind at the core of everything, right? But that mind was actually logic itself. It was logic and reason. So, and I think he would sometimes refer to that as God. Now, I'm saying I think he would sometimes do that. We only know that because Socrates did not write anything down. We only know who Socrates is because his main student, Plato, in all of his expansive works, he had Socrates as a character in his stories, and he would like put words into Socrates' mouth that you can infer Socrates probably did actually say, and some of the things he never did say. But it's like Plato speaks through Socrates in his own stories, if that makes sense. So it's hard, it's impossible to know what's coming from Socrates and what's coming from Plato. But yeah, there is this idea from Platonic thought that, you know, the gods, okay, let's move the gods over here. Maybe they're real, but they're like over there. There's something else that exists here at the core that's maybe even older than the gods, and that's logic and reason, right? And maybe logic and reason itself created the gods. That was possibly the problematic thought that that was at the core of why Socrates was put to death. Plato was more tactical and managed to not be put to death. So anyways, yeah, so Plato, he's an Athenian as well. All of this stuff is happening in Athens. The story of Atlantis was given to us because of Athenians. Now, Solon did go to Egypt, probably. Maybe he really did hear the story over there, whatever. But it was written down in Athens, and it was given to us by the Athenians. And it's just, there's just so much there. Like I could just go on and on and on. So
it really makes me.
Please, Sammy, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, it really makes me think about what, especially given the amount of people with platforms that are speaking and sharing their thoughts on the world, like who are the voices of today that will survive thousands of years? Like we'll never know.
Yeah,
obviously.
It's crazy, right?
Because there's plenty of writers, even in the last century, who were successful in their time, and only after they passed away, you know, did their writings find any kind of foothold within society.
So true.
Or their art.
Never know.
Yeah.
It's so true. Gosh, and now we have such a plethora, right? Like what could survive? Back then, a lot of people were literate, but you know, you had to be a little bit more prominent for your writings to be able to survive through time. But yeah, it is weird, isn't it?
Yeah.
I often wonder if we were to, like Plato, for instance, what would he think of the world being absolutely obsessed with Atlantis for like the last, you know, the Romans were writing about Atlantis. So this interest has been here for like at least 2,000 years. People have been consistently talking about Atlantis and looking for it, and definitely for the last 300 years. And I wonder if you pull people from the past, what would they think? And not just about Plato and Atlantis, but like anything, you know, it just it's crazy. But
yeah, that is wild, you know, that has been such a hot button topic for so long. You know, and you know, over the last year,
because it's so mysterious.
It is, yeah.
It really is. One of the projects I'm working on that's going to be that we're going to talk so much about while we're in Greece is you know, the theories of like what does Atlantis come from? What is it actually pulled from? Is it really like, is there really this story that the Egyptians held on to about Atlantis and like, you know, like what makes sense? Because if you read the story, what Solon supposedly heard from the Egyptians was that Athens was at war with Atlantis. Okay, Athens did not exist 9,000 years before Solon. Like the bedrock is right there. There's no archaeological evidence there that's there 9,000 years ago. But is that kind of like the Bible, where you read some stuff in Genesis and you're like, okay, I can see this is an analogy. This is a simplistic explanation behind something, a kernel of truth that really did happen here. And so I'm doing several videos this year, kind of breaking down like what Atlantis really could be. One of the things I find interesting is that there was a civilization called the Minoans that existed even before Mycenae. So we got the Athenians here, let's say 450 BC, all the way up here during the time of Troy, say 1200 BC, we have the Mycenaeans. But before those guys is a civilization called the Minoans that exist on the island of Crete and along the central Greek islands, a little bit on the Greek mainland. And they're an incredibly sophisticated civilization, actually on the level of the Romans. Like the people tend to say, well, I don't think Atlantis was this highly technologically advanced civilization that is advanced like us today, but maybe on par with the Romans. The Minoans are. They had indoor plumbing. They had these huge palaces. They had okay. If a Minoan traveled from Greece down to Egypt and was walking around town, they would be like, what is this dump? Like, why did I come here? There's nowhere in the ancient world that a Minoan would go and be impressed by. That's the level of sophistication and wealth and advancement of the Minoan world. And you know what caused their downfall? The fourth biggest volcanic eruption in world history. The island of Thera, otherwise known as Santorini, erupts in somewhere between 1450 and 1500 BC. Erupts. It's the fourth biggest explosion or the fourth biggest natural explosion in world history. As far as we can go back, millions, billions of years, there's not been an eruption at this level. Fat Man and Little Boy,
yeah.
The nukes that we dropped on Japan. Those are, I might get these figures wrong, but they were equivalent to 15 kilotons, something like that. It's like 15 kilotons of energy was expelled. The eruption of Thera was 30 million. 30 million kilotons of energy was expelled when that thing erupted. Destroyed the city that's set on the island called Akrotiri. And archaeologists who worked on Minoan Crete and around the Greek world, they say that this superheated debris was launched across the Mediterranean. So much so that the pumice ended up in Egypt.
Oh my God.
Yeah. People think that that the Exodus story, from the biblical Exodus story, some of the plagues may be naturally induced because of how the weather changed in the northern Mediterranean, because it's around that 1500 BC mark when Moses would have existed, right? Like, so that some of these things are you can see how it's all ties together. And so it's this massive event that happens somewhere around 1500 BC, and it causes this darkness over the Minoan world. And they don't think that, so we see all these palaces. So this happens on Thera, and south of it, you have this huge island of Crete. And we see that a lot of the cities burned down, but we don't think that it was because of like ash and superheated debris landing on it and burning the cities up. What they think it was that this plume darkened the sky for days. And so everybody is lighting their candles, everybody is lighting their torches, chaos starts breaking out, and these torches and candles and stuff fall over because it's just slight burns, but it's everywhere.
Yeah.
And they think that it was just chaos. So all these people burn their cities down accidentally in the chaos. And so for the next 100 years or so, you see Minoan civilization like slip in power. And then the Mycenaeans, ruled by Agamemnon in the story of Troy in the movie, they move in and sweep in and just clear out the Minoan world. And all of a sudden the Minoans are gone. So then you have this Mycenaean period, which is the time of Troy and everything. And then you have this Bronze Age collapse and the Greeks fall into the quote unquote Dark Ages. And then they emerge out into the time of Athens. And the Athenians are looking back, and the Greeks have a very poor understanding of their history because of this dark period, right? And I wonder, is the Minoan world not at least part of the idea of Atlantis, this incredibly advanced civilization that's nothing like what they'll see? Because that level of advancement that the Minoans reached, not even the Egyptians had that on that kind of level where normal people lived in such prosperity and had public plumbing and had these big palaces, and the city itself was gorgeous, and normal individual people are wealthy, right? Like Egyptian civilians are poor. They've always been poor. Egyptian cities are so underwhelming that there's hardly any archaeological evidence because all the buildings are made out of like natural debris, and everyone lives in poverty except for the priests and the rulers up at the top, right? But we have Minoan cities. We see how wealthy these people were. So that level of sophistication falls off after the Minoans die and doesn't come back until the height of Rome. Is that not Atlantis? Like, so anyways,
yeah, we actually had someone in the comments say we're the Mycenaeans, the Atlanteans.
Well, maybe the Mycenaeans conquered the Atlanteans. And the Mycenaeans, I believe, colonized Athens as well. I think that's right. During the Bronze Age, Athens was around. So you got Mycenae down here, you've got Athens up here. I think that the Mycenaeans took over Athens. So maybe that's somewhere in the story that the Athenians were at war with the Minoans, but it's really not the Athenians, it's the Mycenaeans who colonized the Athenian world and lived there. But the classical Athenians kind of skip over that because they don't want to acknowledge, and they can't acknowledge, right? They don't quite have the memory of who the Mycenaeans are. So they just say it was the Athenians that defeated the Minoans, but it wasn't really the Athenians. It was the Mycenaeans that had colonized their city during the time of the Bronze Age that sweep in and destroy the Minoans. You know, it's crazy. Like that's my theory, and other people do share that theory. But we're going to be talking about this so much throughout the tour. You know, what really is Atlantis? I think it's bullshit when people say like Plato just completely made it up, because no. I mean, it's just such a specific thing. He gets so specific in his descriptions. But the thing we have to remember is that Greeks are notoriously bad historians. So taking what Plato says word by word is moronic. Like, I'm just telling you, I'm just flat out. If you take any Greek when they're recounting their history, word for word, you're making a drastic mistake, because Greeks are very bad historians. Very bad. Very, very, like the worst in all of the ancient world. They're by far the worst historians ever. So if you take them at their word, I think you're making a mistake.
What's the reasoning for that?
I think it's the Bronze Age collapse. You know, their whole world falls apart. The only people who survived the Bronze Age are the Egyptians. Ramses III says that he repelled the sea peoples. You know, the sea peoples who traveled around the Mediterranean, just like smashed all these cultures. Well, there's so many things that happen at the end of the Bronze Age, but the Egyptians survived. And they have this chronology from 3100 BC. The Egyptians know their history from then all the way down to the time of Alexandria, like the history of Manetho. Manetho, I believe he was an Alexandrian historian. He worked in the Library of Alexandria. He wrote a history of Egypt accurately. Like, the archaeological evidence supports it, because Egypt didn't fall, but the Greek world fell. Right. And they lost all their, well, also the Egyptians were literate from 3100 BC. And before that, the Minoans were literate. We have linear A and B. Like the Minoans were a little bit literate, but it was more so for like keeping count of your resources and food and things like that. And then the Mycenaeans are literate as well, but it's more like clerical, if that makes sense. Keeping up money and trade and this, that, and the other. They're not writing literature, right? That's a huge part of this. And so when those civilizations collapse and the money kind of leaves Greece, all of a sudden everyone there is just living in the shadow of these ruined palaces of this time of these great civilizations that used to exist. And now they don't really have much imports or exports anymore. All the trade routes are destroyed, possibly because of the sea people. It's a big mystery. I mean, we don't know what caused the Bronze Age collapse, but Greece was hit the hardest in the Mediterranean, and the Greeks lost their memory. They just, like, they had amnesia. They were literally cut off from the past. It's like, they cut the tall poppy and everything that used to be there is gone. And so the Greeks have to reimagine who they are. And so throughout the Dark Ages, you have all these pockets around Greece, and these people are trying to remember their past. And so that's where this elaborate mythology comes from. All these people make up what their ancient world used to be. And that's why Greek mythology is so vast and interesting, but so vast because they're trying to make up what their history is, and they don't know. And so by the time the Greeks reach a height again around 450 BC, their memory is only 300 years old of who they are. And so, they have all these stories that pass down through history of what they thought that they were like, and none of it lines up with the archaeology. I mean, even just 200 years earlier, it doesn't line up with the archaeology. So that's why I say, like, I don't take Plato literal word for word, because you don't take the Greeks literal word for word on anything that has to do with what took place like more than 2 centuries before the time they lived. In the time that they live, like Thucydides, his documentation of the Peloponnesian War in the late 400s BC is amazing. Like, he's dead on because he's witnessing it, and he's such a good historian at writing it down. But they can't remember their past. They and that right there, having to live inside the ancient world and come up with a new identity, is probably the reason that they created Western identity as it exists today. Because
what a great point.
Yeah. So
that the loss of that identity created this alternate way of thinking and exploring thoughts as they tried to rediscover themselves.
Yeah. It's crazy, man.
And it's such a great point about Atlantis and exploring the ideas of Atlantis, to remember that. I mean, I think this is just everything that you just said is such a, really based, practical way of looking at all of this as you start to because a lot of people over the last year and more have been putting a lot of energy into trying to like publicly declare where Atlantis is. And so, that's something that's really worth, a good foundation to start on. Is understanding that.
In sort of the, sometimes the changing of your mindset of this search for Atlantis as well can be healthy, right? Like, we have a preconceived idea of what we would like Atlantis to be because of the books that we read that most of the time really aren't based on ancient, like, primary sources. Like, it's not based on Plutarch. Plutarch was there. Well, he wasn't there, but he was a lot closer than we are, right? So, but we're reading books based on an author that was born in 1950 or 1960 or whatever, 2,000, more than 2,000 years removed from this world. And what? Probably doesn't speak ancient Greek either. You can learn to speak ancient Greek. And so
have you done that?
I've started. I if you put it in front of me, I don't think a year ago I could read the Iliad, but now I could sort of read it, but now I've fallen off a lot. Like,
that's one of my life goals, to learn how to read ancient Greek.
You can do it. You can learn how to read Homer.
It's probably going to take my whole life. I'm going to be an old lady in a rocking chair. Like,
no. I think it would take you. I think it would take you less than a year to learn how to like sort of read Homer. That ancient like, let's say 800 BC Greek is kind of, it's growing, right? No one is going to be able to, well, I said not no, some people will. You're probably not going to be able to learn how to read Plato. The Plato is.
Oh, I mean, like purely off of me not being able to keep my attention span on something long enough. Like that's why it's going to take me my whole life. Like not like a brain IQ skill issue. Like I could totally, if I sat down, I could totally do it. I know I could, but it's just,
it's that ADHD kicking in.
That's where
I don't even try with languages. I'm so bad when I travel. I've gotten very good at it's hand signals.
Sure.
What would you say is
this? Everybody knows what this means.
Yes.
Yeah. What would you say is what would you say are some of your favorite books to, like, if someone was wanting to dive deeper into like the history of everything that you just went over, like being able to kind of see like a big picture, like what are the sources that you like to turn to? Is it the original sources, or are there like books later on written that like give a larger kind of view? Or
okay, so a good one, let's see, so a good one are some that you guys maybe have seen, like, okay, so we should start with, it's hard to say, so Sailing the Wine Dark Sea. This is written by Tues Cahill, and it basically is, I think it's 10 chapters, and it takes you through the world of the Greeks from the time of the little bit that we know about the Minoans. And I think it takes you all the way through the end of the Hellenistic period. The Hellenistic period was started by Alexander the Great. So it takes you through from before, let's say, the Trojan War, all the way to the aftermath of Alexander. And that's really interesting. If you want to know about Athens, The Rise of Athens, like this great book by Anthony Everett. And The Rise of Athens is actually based on The Rise and Fall of Athens, which is the collection of Plutarch's biographies about the Athenians. Plutarch did not actually call it The Rise and Fall of Athens, but it's multiple books about Athenians compiled into one, kind of like the Bible, right? So this is like a synthesized version of this. You just learn about basically the coolest ancient city ever, with the most personality of any ancient city. And the one I'm trying to put myself through right now, which is quite dense, is Thucydides, the Peloponnesian War. And Thucydides, he's an Athenian, and he recognizes that this war is about to erupt between Athens and Sparta, and that it's probably going to be like the Trojan War, except on a way more vicious scale. And he was right about that. And so he started writing a history of it. And man, I'll tell you, it is absolutely effing crazy how when you pick this book up and start reading it, his verbiage and how direct and forward he is exactly the same way I've been talking to you this whole time. It is that forward, and he's moving that fast, and it's filled with that much personality. And it's like he's talking on a podcast. And it's so surprising that sometimes I have to be like, wait, is this the editor writing something in real quick to like give me a preface of what's happening? Because it's from the first person point of view. Because he's like, I saw, I thought, I met these people, I did this, and it's like,
I love that,
personally talking to the reader. And it's so jarring that I constantly have to check and be like, wait, okay, is this the editor of this book? Who edited this? It says a new translation by Martin Hammond. And I'm like, okay, is it Martin that's saying this? No, it's Thucydides, because it's that personal and that direct. And it like grips you, even though it's very dense. Like there's a lot of stuff that you're not going to be familiar with in that. Because he's writing it for someone. He never imagined that I would be reading this book, right? So he's writing it for someone who's going to know all this little stuff that he mentions. But I'll tell you guys, like, when you get into reading the primary sources and you learn how to track them down and get them, or at least as close as you can get, like Plutarch lived in 200 AD, right? So he's writing about stuff that happened 700 years earlier, but based on sources that existed between Plutarch and that time. But those sources don't exist. Only Plutarch exists, right? So we're as close as we can get. He's going to be a lot more accurate than we are. But getting to read that it's just mind blowing. Like in Thucydides, especially, you're actually reading the words that were written by a man who lived in Athens during the height of Athens, who met Plato. This dude right here, Thucydides, definitely stood next to Plato at the marketplace while he was buying.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
that's so cool.
And that's kind of motivating. I grew up always loving to read. I've always loved reading. But I tell you, one of the worst things that's happened to me from getting into YouTube is I just consume all my content through YouTube now, and have not been reading like I should. And I've got several books waiting next. They're on my nightstand. I'm like, we're gonna get it done eventually.
What are your next books?
Oh gosh, I'd have to go grab them. That's how much I haven't put into them. They're just sitting there for months.
That's where I'm at. I'm really,
know what they are. Yeah.
I'm really trying to be better about just setting time aside to read. Which I feel like, I relate with you, Luke, on just getting to that point in life where it's just been hustling so hard for so long that it's like, okay, things are finally starting to work out and come together, that I can take a little bit breather and maybe take a day off and read. So I've started a couple times and then gone too long without reading it. The Silk Road.
Yeah.
I'm really wanting to actually read the whole thing. Which I know we'll touch on a little bit of the things that we talked about. But you're going to be so fun to be in Greece with, just your, ability to put all these pieces together and the storytelling and the amount of information that you retain and you're able to.
Well, there's nothing else up here.
Share.
Literally nothing else going on.
You just absorb and then.
Yeah. It literally took years for my wife to accept the fact that what goes on up here is only ancient history. I don't see the socks on the floor. I don't see the toothpaste laying on the side of the sink. Like when I'm walking around, I'm not even seeing what's in front of me. I'm just thinking about ancient history,
That's so cool.
and so I'm able to retain it all because there's nothing else. So anyways, but yeah, it's, when it comes to reading, it's more like, what happens is you'll read a few pages and then boom, it clicks and you're like, whoa, this is actually interesting. I just read a few pages. Okay. I'm in this now, whereas before you read it, it's like, oh God, look how many pages that is.
Yeah. It's a bit like running.
Yeah, exactly. It's the discipline first, and then when you do it for just a little bit, then all of a sudden the rush of motivation comes in, and that's actually why a lot of people don't start anything, because you wait for the energy, it doesn't come. You actually have to arrive and just do it, and then the energy and the motivation is actually second.
Yeah,
it's funny. AI's been kind of good for that. I love writing. I've always enjoyed writing, and I've always been pretty decent at it. The problem is getting started, and so now it can be really easy to plug ideas into AI and tell me write this thing for me, and then it's like that got it going, and then I don't use it. I use it as a template to start, and then I end up being able to erase everything and put my own ideas in there. But it got me started.
Or have it ask you questions,
right? And it'll get the ball rolling, right? Which I have found AI to be a good tool for, not for
replacing your writing. Yeah,
because it still doesn't sound right.
And AI can hallucinate things, right? Like it can make up. It's really difficult. I think it's gotten a lot better, but man, I tell you, I used to ask when I was first learning how to get in, really how to track down these primary sources. And I actually found that the easiest thing to do was just to order the damn copies off of Amazon, because I had the physical thing in front of me. Because I would ask Grok or ChatGPT. I would say, what did Plutarch say about XYZ? And then it would give me a quote, and I'd be like, wait, that's not the way I remember that being. And then, I'd have to go find like an ebook PDF document version of it. And I have to, was it Control F to be able to find the right word and this, that, and the other. And it was just like horrible. And
it makes shit up all the time.
Yeah. And I think it's gotten a lot better. I just wish that there was a version of AI that like, sometimes I feel like AI, I don't know what ethereal realm it goes into, but I wish that there was a version that was actually just like a search engine, and I can just ask it a question and then it searches the internet for me and just tells me what's on the internet, if that makes sense. But sometimes I feel like it like hallucinates, it creates things on its own. And
I wonder if that's what, I know that Ian Carroll and his team are like have been developing web. I know I'm not 100% sure if that's just like pertaining to researching the Epstein files, but it might be like whatever, you might be able to plug in any kind of like research to it, and then it only pulls the information from that. So I'm sure if it's not what they're building, I bet you someone is working on building that, because that's I think a pretty common frustration that people have.
Yeah. What I've started doing is you can go, so in a lot of my videos, I started, and people like it, and I like it too. It's really fun. In your videos, if you're talking about history and you're able to find some kind of primary source who was really there and saw it, go on Internet Archive or something like that, and you can find these original documents, and I'll just, I'll write down a bunch of things that I think could be a key, like trigger word, to find what I'm looking for. But I actually have a scanned version of these books, and I hit Command F and I'll search. Like when I was doing this video I just did on the extinct Appalachian jaguars that John Lawson and Thomas Ashe saw in the province of Carolina, which is North and South Carolina, in the late 1600s and the early 1700s. I just found John Lawson's book printed in 1709, and it was a scanned version of it. And I would just command search like cat, lion, tiger, like trying to find all these terms. And so I was able to collect all of that and then present that as a presentation. If I had asked AI to do that, forget it. Like there's no way AI would be able to go find all that for me. And so that's a hard part as a historian or someone who's interested in the ancient world, is with the way we access data constantly changing, learning how to be effective at accessing the data is a battle.
That's a whole skill set now.
Oh, for sure it is. Yeah.
Well, you've got some big stuff coming up this year. Jumping in on the Quest conferences, man.
Yes, sir.
People can come see you here actually pretty soon in May.
Yep.
Look at you right there in the center.
I like it.
Yay. This is going to be so really fun.
That's a pretty good group of guys right there, and gals.
Guys and gals.
Guys and gals.
In Sedona,
People will be able to come see you speak in Sedona, May 5th, if I got the number right.
May 1st through the 3rd.
1st through the 3rd. You know better than me. That's crazy.
And I had to look very closely to be certain that I was right.
Yes, you can come for the whole weekend for $249. I think there's VIP tickets, and
which I know from experience that is like the best ticket price of any ancient civilizations conference I have ever personally been to. That's a great price.
And it'll be in Sedona, which is always a lot of fun.
Heck yeah.
And do you know what you're speaking on yet?
I don't. I haven't decided yet. I've got a few different presentations I've thought about. I have an updated version of the Olmec Enigma. It's sort of like this Olmec book I've been working on that everybody it hounds me about constantly. Yeah. I've got an updated version, an expanded version of my Olmec Enigma presentation that I'm thinking about giving, but I got a couple other presentations up my sleeve.
Up your sleeve there. All right. Yeah.
I have thought about so this other conference, the first conference I ever spoke at, I gave a presentation called Maya Atlantis, right? Not that I was saying that the Maya was Atlantis, but the Atlantis word kind of draws you in, right? Because it's this lost, advanced world that I'm going to tell you about that you don't know about. I'm thinking about doing Minoan Atlantis and kind of spelling out the theory I just gave you guys of how the Minoan world You know, could
I
be.
would like to hear that. I
Yeah,
really enjoyed everything you just shared here tonight. I would love to hear more in-depth version of that.
dude, it's so cool, man. I mean, it's sometimes I find people are actually disappointed if you give them a actual theory of what Atlantis was, because people kind of, a lot of people, and I think maybe we're kind of now crossing the hump, because for a lot of time people, you want Atlantis to be this ghost of the ancient world, right? You don't want to actually know. We all pretend like we want to know, but like I say a lot of people don't want to actually know, because if you present an idea, they'll like immediately shut it down, because you don't want it to be solved, because maybe if you solve it, that ruins the mystique of it. But all I do is think about the ancient world, and I have crossed the hump. I have now left the place where I want it to be a ghost of the ancient past. And I'm sort of trying to like think of like, okay, well, like really, what is it? Like, what is it actually? And so I have graduated into this place where, you know what? Maybe at least partly it is inspired by the Minoan world, and there's not a lot known about it. And I'm going to investigate it and see, how advanced this really is. And people always compare what they think Atlantis to be like is to be similar to ancient Rome. Well, the Minoans were the only ancient civilization that was on par with ancient Rome long before Rome ever existed.
It's a really good point.
Yeah, 2,000 years before Rome existed, actually. Well, the height of Rome. So, yeah, I'm just going to kind of give that presentation, and my mindset is not to tell somebody Atlantis didn't exist, 11,000 years ago or whatever. It's not to do that. It's to say, listen, ancient people are just trying to understand their ancient past, and they got a lot wrong, because they're not able to peer into the past like we are. The Bible isn't a perfect world history historical document. When biblical characters are reaching far back into the past to try to explain it, like the Adam and Eve story, there's lots of things about the Adam and Eve story that don't logically make sense. But it makes a lot more sense when you go, you know what, this is early Christians or Israelites. They're trying to synthesize the ancient past and get to the core of the story. What's the point of that story? That's the main purpose.
It's allegorical.
Yeah, and so there's so many different ways to interpret the Adam and Eve story, right? And so ancient people do a lot of that. So Atlantis could be 2, it could be 3 different things. There was another city in Plato's lifetime in the early 4th century, which would be I think it's around 373 AD. It's a city that begins with the letter K, but it's a Greek city that was washed away by a flood during Plato's lifetime. He knew that happened. And so it was a classical Greek city, pretty advanced, destroyed by a flood. Maybe it inspired him to like, you know what? I've always heard about this ancient civilization back from the time of heroes before Troy, and then so it kind of like all comes together as this story, right? So it could be this city that was destroyed in we should look up. Sorry, I gotta look up the name of this. Okay, what ancient Greek city was sunk in the early 4th century BC? I think it's called Kaikion or something like that. Heliki. That 373. So I got the date right. So 373 BC, a catastrophic earthquake struck the region at night, causing the land to subside, followed immediately by a massive tsunami from the Gulf of Corinth that submerged the city and drowned all of its inhabitants. Plato was alive while that happened. Why, in all the time that people have been trying to investigate Atlantis, why does nobody ever mention Heliki? Because, people say like, oh, well, maybe it kind of dilutes the romantic thing of it. It doesn't dilute it for me. It's cool. And so it makes me think like, you know what? This was something that happened in the Greek world because the Greeks like to live by water, and water, things happen and people drown and flood. This is something that lives in the back of the Greek mindset. And so, you know, maybe my presentation will be me actually just offering an explanation of like, this is a practical explanation of what Atlantis could be. And it could be based on 1, 2, or even 3 different cities, civilizations being destroyed by these cataclysmic events. This is something that happened in the Greek world. So anywho, that might be what I give my presentation on.
Well, I think
I'd
the
love to hear
really
that.
cool thing about like getting to do your own research and just the amount of information that we have access to today, and you know, being able to read these books that were written forever ago, and then pair that with things that, you know, archaeological evidence that's more recent, and like the magic of it is that no one has probably read all of the same things that you have read as an individual. So like only you can make the connections that you make, because you're the only one that's like absorbed the amount of information that you have, because there's just so much information. Yeah, it's the pattern recognition, or it's like because there's so much history, like we all have different perspectives of it, and not one person can claim, you know, without knowing, having hard evidence of like an actual fact. Like when we're just looking into the past trying to pull on a string and see where it leads, you know, it's just, yeah, it's really cool.
Yeah, it is cool, and I've thought about that so much. You know, the past it's so vast and expansive, and you know, it's like it's sort of like, you know, how Game of Thrones is so well written, and all the characters have all met each other or have some kind of like you know, one person connection to each other, and there's these deep layers that are through it. And if you know, I spend so much time watching Game of Thrones clips because I like to read the comments and see people's perspective on the story. Ancient history is the same thing. It's the same thing. There's so many webs that other people recognize, right? And it's impossible for one person to be able to synthesize and understand and see the entire thing, because their experiences mold their perspective, right? So
it's almost like the point isn't to be right. The point isn't to like say this is fact. I mean, we're obviously all on, like, I think on some level in a search for truth, and as we look to the past, like we're trying to find some threads of truth throughout it, but it's like almost like the goal is to be more explorative, to see where it leads us, and hopefully that is more towards something that is truth-like. But even if it is towards something that isn't true, when you find out it's not true, that's ultimately leading you to something that's more true, because it's leading you away from the thing that's been like found to not be true. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, exactly.
So it's still worth like researching, or
you know
putting it all together.
What else is really cool about Atlantis and the Minoans? The last point I'll make, and then you guys, if you want to hear the whole thing, come to
there you go.
If you want to hear the very expanded, and like I've spent some real time thinking about how to present this. You know, one of the reasons that we love the search for Atlantis is okay. So I have never said this publicly. I thought about, well, it's not really that big of a deal. I've thought about writing a book on Atlantis, and the book was going to be called An Atlantis of One's Own, and it was going to be from the Roman time period all the way up till today, all the people who have searched for Atlantis and like the different theories about it. And I decided not to do it because I'd have to like mention modern people's names. I don't want to do all that. Somebody please write that book. But one of the things that I wrote in the first chapter of when I started writing that book was that we all have a personal relationship with Atlantis, because it represents like a primordial time that had all of the things that our world should have today, right? Kind of like, you know, I don't know, we just search for something more, right? Like we all feel this pull to this primordial place that was higher, and maybe in some ways it was better. You know what's cool about the Minoan world is a lot like the Olmecs. There's no glorification of war. They're one of the only ancient cultures, maybe the only ancient culture in the entire Mediterranean that doesn't seem to glorify war. We see soldiers, but they're more like marching in processions and in parades and stuff like that. We see warships, but they're never at war. They're always like in harbors. And there's a huge theory out there that this was like um, a peaceful, probably not really, but not a civilization that valued war and gore and violence in the way that later Greeks certainly did, in ways that the Romans absolutely did, in the way that the Egyptians absolutely did. This was a civilization that absolutely ruled the seas and lived on islands, many of them like Atlantis, and was probably the wealthiest civilization. I mean, it's arguable against Egypt. Egypt is kind of its own unique situation, but certainly the wealthiest civilization around, and didn't value warfare, and they seem to be. And, we don't even know their religion. We don't know what their political beliefs were. We don't know how they viewed the world. We don't know how to interpret their art that we see on the walls in these huge parades that they have. We don't understand anything, nothing about the Minoan world and their worldview. They are legitimately a lost civilization. So all that juiciness, like I'm extending a gift to people watching this, and I felt the same way. All that juiciness, all that depth that you're looking for, and what you wish that if we found a civilization like Atlantis, well, maybe Atlantis is based on 2 or 3 different places. One of them is the Minoan civilization. And you can actually go dive into that. You can investigate it. You can look at the archaeological evidence. And, if you study it, you can kind of come to your interpretations of who these people were and what the civilization was really like. All that juiciness, those bits, you can go see the ruins. You can go see Mycenae, which we're going to go see. All that is there, but it's the shifting and maybe the maturing of your perspective of the ancient world, where you arrive at this point where you're like, you know what, now I'm going to take this next step, and I'm going to look and see if this may have been something that Atlantis was inspired by, or comes from, or whatever.
Well,
yeah,
I think
that would be my presentation.
That'll be so cool. But I think what you said earlier about like people not wanting to really know what it is, and just I think when we think about what like Atlantis really represents, it kind of represents higher technology. It represents like not being focused on war, like a higher consciousness, at least how it's like evolved into how we perceive it today. And I think
yeah, for sure,
what that really gives us is hope in a world where right now things just seem so chaotic and held back and like disorganized and violent. Like we are all kind of searching for something hopeful, that something of higher consciousness and something of higher technology and more harmony is possible. And I think that's like a big reason why we look to the past and try to find these ancient civilizations and not just discredit them as, like hunter-gatherer cavemen. Like we want to believe that something much greater than what we are now in some ways existed, so that as we're going to the future, like we know we have some kind of a roadmap or hope or possibility that we can do it again.
Yeah, for sure. Well, and that's why what's funny is, as an independent ancient historian, I see people in their hunt for ancient lost technology or Atlantis or whatever, and I may see some of the holes in like the logic or the understanding, or maybe just like the lack of perspective of this ancient civilization, which I'm guilty of, and I'm sure other people see it in my work as well. But what's funny is it's the people that believe in Atlantis and this lost civilization that are very hopeful and have this hopeful and optimistic view of the future of what it could be. And what's funny is they're usually more chivalric and like sort of heroic, maybe even patriotic people, right? And it's the people that shoot down Atlantis that are the most pessimistic, nihilistic, few people that I have had to be around, right? And so what's funny is, I may agree more historically with some, nihilistic people, but I actually don't like those people. I have got nothing in common with them because they don't see that heart. They don't have that heart, that spirit that people who believe in Atlantis do, right? It's very interesting, but yeah, it's
Yeah.
funny.
I
It's
think
kind of
like open-mindedness and optimism can go hand in
Which
hand.
I think is very indicative of the community of like alternative ancient history. It's this willingness to entertain this. I mean, first of all, I think there's plenty of evidence that draws people into connecting, like, a lot of
100%.
these things
Yeah.
about the ancient past and connected things. But it's also that understanding or willingness to entertain the idea of like there being a past that encompassed this greater standard of living as a whole, as people and throughout societies, than the path that we're on currently, like you were talking
Yeah.
about just a second
Yeah.
ago, Sammy, that was more hopeful, more giving, more, just all these different things, that was, based on a system that was more collaborative, cooperative, things like that. Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I think it's a good note to end on is exactly what you said about there's plenty of evidence that draws people in. That's 100% true. Sometimes when people see that I might be dubious about the story of Atlantis existing in the Azores, beyond the Straits of Gibraltar, the Gates of Hercules, 11,600 years ago, maybe I am dubious of that story. But when I look at the pyramids, I still think, how the hell did they do this? And I don't agree at all with academics who are like, well, it's easy. It's just a matter of leverage and having ropes and the amount of people. It's like, stop. I'll actually believe in levitation before I believe that it's easy. Okay. When I see the amount of like those pre-dynastic, like very precise vases,
Yeah.
that is freaking crazy.
That's great.
It's not oh my gosh. If you you guys have been to the unfinished obelisk in Aswan. That thing is insane. When you're down underneath, think about the sheer, how the heck do you free that obelisk from the ground without it falling on everybody?
Yeah.
And then what's crazy is they didn't just pick up that obelisk and move it. They had to cut out the whole mountain all the way to the Nile and roll that thing on through there. They weren't just like overly optimistic, like, I think we're gonna try to erect this 1,200-ton obelisk. We'll see if we can do that. Well, maybe, I don't know if we can. No, they knew that they could. It's just that the stone cracked and it wasn't worth using. They didn't know that the stone was going to crack. But the Egyptians were clearly more capable than anyone else in the ancient world of achieving feats in stonework and architecture that are so amazing and so baffling that people, at least 4,500 years later, cannot figure it out. The lost technology, what do you like anybody just shooting that down is insane, right?
Yeah.
When, depending, I don't know how, if it's, I don't think it's like lasers or like alien stuff, but what I think that it is it's ancient people that are so sophisticated, possibly, there were clearly people there that were as intelligent as Einstein and Oppenheimer. I mean, that we all know, like, the IQ is there, obviously. But these are people who are so good at extrapolating the most out of the natural world in ways beyond you and I can possibly imagine.
Yeah.
And that probably goes to the spiritual realm as well. When you go to the Temple of Luxor and you go back into that Holy of Holies, that most sacred back part where it's the solid megalithic granite pillars, and you look at this giant room that was supposedly reserved for Amenhotep III himself, just him to be back there, to be connected with his father Amun-Ra. Do you really think that they built this whole temple, and that when he went in that Holy of Holies, he didn't actually meet Amun-Ra? I bet you he actually did. That's like my controversial opinion, but these people aren't making all this up. All these ancient gods around the ancient worlds and all the temples that are built for them and these sacred sites that people spent thousands and thousands of hours building and using was not all made up and hallucinated. This was real. I'll tell you my favorite, somehow I brought this back to Greece. My favorite Greek historian, Jeremy McInerney, he has a lecture on Delphi, and he says it's funny because he's like an academic, and I can tell he doesn't want to like overly go into this. And I probably need to email him about this. He says, I'm going to try to, I can't quote him word for word, but he says something along the lines of, I don't mean this in any kind of metaphorical way, in an analogy or anything like that. I'm just going to say this, that the Oracle of Delphi was not figuratively or metaphorically, but was literally possessed by the spirit of Apollo and gave prophecies through the knowledge of Apollo. And then that's it. That's all he says. And I don't know exactly what that means or what he's trying to say, but I totally agree with that. This wasn't just all made up, like so many sterilized academics look at it. This shit was real, and I just think that the ancients lived in a completely different reality than us.
Yeah.
And, as getting like real woo, our pineal glands are calcified to hell. And whatever our little radar is that pings us into this other world, it's dead. This era of humanity just isn't connected to that. I don't know how to explain it any way other than that, but it's just so obvious to me.
Obvious just in the way that we choose to exist within the world compared to the ancients. Because they clearly did have the IQ to be able to pull off these amazing things, structures, cities, and all this different stuff that we just spent a lot of time talking about. And how we choose to do that is complete opposite. It's not in alignment with our environment or, anything like that. From our building materials to how we've structured our, societies and things like that. It's just completely different. So, yeah, it's we're different people.
Yeah, exactly. These are the kind of conversations that I love having for like an entire tour. When you show up, from the moment you show up, it's just this for like 7 to 9 days.
Yeah.
It's
straight.
just,
yeah. That's how our Egypt trip was. It was just so fun.
You learn more about I've said this about every tour I've ever been on. It's always true. Whether it's about the ancient world in general or about the specific culture you're coming to see, it's going to be true for me and everyone that joins us in Greece. You're going to learn more about the ancient world and in our Greek tour in particular, the Greek world in particular, during that week than you ever have in all the time you spent studying it. It is just being there and seeing it in person. It just takes your mind to a whole new place, and all of a sudden you're in it. And everything that you try to learn about that culture afterwards, you've been there, you've seen it, you know what it feels like to be there. Like when you read Thucydides or you go back and read Plutarch, you just you absorb it all because you've been there and seen it. And then all of a sudden, learning about this ancient culture, I kid you not, is 10 times faster. You just absorb it all because you've been there and seen it. It's just the visceral experience of being there. There is absolutely no substitute for it at all.
At all. You were talking about a second ago about Egypt and just not believing that these pyramids and things were made with ropes and people pulling them and stuff. There's, it made me think about exactly what you're talking about there. Is you can't describe the pyramids to people in a way that they can understand what it's like. And when you're standing in front of the pyramids, and they literally take up your entire field of vision, the structure that is that massive.
Yeah.
And the scale of these blocks and stones, it leaves an impression on you that's just that's unshakable.
Mm-hmm.
And stays with you forever. And you're exactly right, that carries over into this fascination and draw to, like, if you sit down and read a book, you're just going to be like, because you're looking at the world differently, you're looking at that structure, at that civilization, at these things differently after having seen it in person. It changes you. So
yeah,
you're 100% right. Walking down the streets in Greece, seeing these places in person and hearing about them and learning about them, it's just going to be an experience that you can't shake. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, it's going to be
looking forward to it, man.
You know, another thing is crazy is we're going to be standing where the book of Corinthians was written, you know?
Right, yeah.
Corinthians.
I've been to a bunch of places from the Bible, and it's always been a bit surreal. Visited a place in Lebanon that was the site of Jesus's first miracle, turning water to wine.
Wow.
And there's an ancient quarry there on that site.
Oh, really?
Mm-hmm. It just cool. It's not even acknowledged, and you walk right through it and past it to the site where that party was supposed to have been.
Yeah,
I've got a video out on it. It's amazing. It's like a quarry site, yeah, walking in the footsteps of people from the past, these bigger than life historical figures is an incredible experience. It's really cool.
Yeah, and
y'all gotta come to
you guys come to Greece with us. Come hang out with us in Sedona. May what is our Greek date? It's November 15th to 21st, and then May is the 1st to the 3rd, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then we've got the Austin event conference in October.
That's right.
The 17th through the 19th, if I'm correct on that. You got anything else coming up? You got some videos dropping soon you want to let people know about?
Yeah. So Friday, I've got the video from our Gila expedition coming out. Following that, the week afterwards is going to be a video following up the expedition. Like, it's going to be, 5 lessons or something that I learned from the expedition, and kind of just more talking about it a little bit more. And then after that, I've got a video. I'm dropping the sauce here. I usually don't announce myself this far ahead, but I got a video I'm really excited about called "The Sunken City of Akrotiri and Its Destruction," and it's that city on Santorini that was destroyed by the eruption of that volcano. And then so that's kind of setting up all these videos I'm going to do about Greece and the like Minoan Atlantis. And then today, well, I don't know how much I can say, but I'm doing a project with Colossal Biosciences. That's all I can say. If you guys are familiar with Colossal, they are the de-extinction and preservation company. So they've got these handful of key extinct species that they have been able to acquire. I'm sorry, my brain is, what is it? They're able to acquire genetic material. Good Lord, genetic material. Yeah. DNA, genetic material. And so they're going to try to resurrect these extinct species. And then with, and then the preservation aspect is something that they're big on as well. But most people don't realize that that's what they do is. So for, key species that are close to extinction, they get genetic material and they hold on to it for safekeeping in case the species goes extinct. They're going to recreate it and then put it back. And so really, really cool. Now, I'm no wildlife biologist, anything like that. But I am a historian, and I'm very interested in extinct species when it intersects with human history. And so Colossal doesn't have a historian. So that's all I'll say. So really, really cool.
No doubt, dude.
I'm very excited about that. So I'm working with them on that. And then And then, gosh, yeah. And
Looks
then,
like you got another big year lining up. We've got all of your information in the description for the video. So if you guys are watching on our channel or one of these, because we're dual streaming all over, make sure you guys go down there, follow Luke on his socials and his channel. Yeah, you can join him and see you speak in person in Sedona, or
heck
come
yeah.
with us to Greece.
Yeah. Man, I can't come to both.
Come to both.
Yeah. Come the Minoan Atlantis. That might be what I do. I'm gonna get so much flack from academics.
Just as long as you're prepared.
Just putting the word Atlantis in anything is setting you, like, it's like painting a giant target here.
Yeah.
And if I do that, oh man, because there's so many like Greek historians are so uppity, right? Because it's,
dude, get that smoke, smoke, dude.
Yeah. So we'll see.
They're boring.
Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna do. I think it's gonna be really fun. I think it's gonna be really fun, and I hope that at the end of the presentation, a lot of people are like, wow, like that. All of a sudden, like, you have this mountain of evidence that really makes like sense. You can't deny it. It's there. And I just hope that I don't want anybody to come away from it and be like, oh yeah, Atlantis never existed. It was definitely the Minoans, but more so that, oh wow, like, okay, so the ancient world is more nuanced and complicated than I ever realized before. And maybe Atlantis, yeah, okay, I get it. It's ancient historians are trying to synthesize and make sense of the past, and maybe it's based on multiple different things at once. And this Minoan civilization, maybe it is partly based on this. I'm going to look more into that and read more about the Minoans, and then it's just this bridge into somewhere else in the ancient world, right? So that's what
it's just opening a door for people.
Yeah. And I'm a huge believer that all ideas should be explored. Yeah. So there shouldn't be this, you talking about Atlantis doesn't inhibit anybody else's work on Atlantis or whatever else or any other ideas. So
yeah. And Matt Bell, it's been a while since he and I chatted, but every time we got together, we've always agreed that what I think of Atlantis, and he agrees with me, is it's actually kind of an umbrella term for the lost ancient world and all the mysteries that encompass it and things that like boggle your mind about the ancient world. It's just an umbrella term for all of that, right? That's the way I interpret it now. It's like you look at the stonework in Peru and you see the magnificence of Machu Picchu, and it's like, how the heck did they do this? That whole feeling is Atlantis, right? And so, and the mysteries are valid. Like, it's all valid. Yeah. And so, yeah, I totally agree with you.
Hell yeah. Well, dude, you've got to come back on again. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. We've met once in person, which was cool. Yes. So I'm looking forward to seeing you again at the conference. And then, I'll be seeing a lot of you this year, actually, it looks like.
Heck yeah. Yeah. Man, that was a fun day we did at the museum with Gary.
That was cool. Yeah. And congratulations on the, what's it called? The show or the group Colossus and
Colossal. Yeah.
Colossal. And I'll be waiting expectantly to see how that turns out. That sounds really dope.
Yeah, man. I'll tell you more about it later.
I've got one question for you. Sure. From the chat. From Word of Mouth Guy, thank you. Will Luke be doing a hat giveaway at Sedona?
A hat giveaway? Gosh, that would be very expensive. Unfortunately, good hats take like 6 months to make or something crazy. If you go order,
do you make hats?
No.
One of the brims?
I'm sorry?
Is that what he's asking?
Like one of the Indiana Jones.
Yeah, he probably wants me to bring hats along with him or whatever, give them away. If I were giving them away, they would be too cheap. You wouldn't want one. A really good hat is made out of beaver felt, and you've got to go get fitted and sized. And beaver felt has always been expensive, but the fibers, right? Like the fibers are crazy. You want to know something insane? an inch by inch, or I'm sorry, a 1 inch by 1 inch area of your human head has like, is it 150 hairs? It's something like that. Beavers,
Probably more than that.
150,000.
Whoa.
I think it's 150,000 hairs per square inch on their pelt. So that said, their fur is completely waterproof. So
Yeah.
beaver pelt is like the finest pelt that you can get. You can wear, you can just destroy it. And so you
Mhm.
want a nice hat that's made out of beaver felt, which is expensive and takes time to acquire. And then it takes time to make because they've got to form the hat. They've got to get it to your right head size, and they've got to steam it and get the shape that you want. It's a whole process.
Whole thing.
But it's totally worth doing if you guys are really into hats. Go get yourself. Don't spend $100 and get a rabbit felt hat from a store. Go get it custom made for you and wait 6 months. It's gonna be so worth it. I didn't mean to give a hat lecture, but I'm very passionate about this.
I was never sold on the hats. I might have to try.
Yeah,
I might have to
I've
try
never
one of
heard
these hats
this.
now.
Here, I got the hat. I'll show you.
I just lose my hats. I used
know,
to have a
well-
nice hat collection. I don't know where any of them are.
Everything,
They get
my
squished.
entire wardrobe over the year, including hats, is boiled down to stuff I can just throw in a bag and leave.
Yeah, that's a nice hat.
So this was made for me by Wild Hats. Shout out Wild Hats. They're awesome.
Shouts.
So this hat is actually based, I'm spilling the sauce right here. I shouldn't do this. This is based on Val Kilmer's hat, The Ghost in the Darkness, if you guys have seen that movie.
Oh yeah, dope.
And it's also based on Spencer Dutton's hat from Yellowstone's 1923. So it's a mixture of the two hats. It's the same color as Spencer Dutton's, and then the form is Val Kilmer and Ghost in the Darkness. So it's an African safari hunter's hat from the early 1900s. That's the vibe of it. So it's not a fedora, but a safari hat. And so all this weathering actually came from the Gila expedition that I was just on.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, and then
And that was a
That's
good movie
nice.
too.
Fancy.
yeah, super cool. You shouldn't have brought up hats.
Drip.
Talk about yeah, I love this hat. I used to have somebody was just asked me about this earlier today. They asked me if on a tour I would wear like my leather indie jacket with somebody years ago sent me an indie fedora, but the company that makes all those clothing for the actual movies, I used to work with them, and they're just not. It's just not run by nice people, like at all. There are people who
support them then.
Yeah. So I was like, you know what? I'm not gonna wear the indie jacket anymore. Like I'm over it. I started doing it because it was like fun and familiar for people, but it kind of in the vein of what I was saying last year, like I got to be my own person now. So I'm putting that aside. I got my personal hat made, right? So like I just had to leave that behind. But anyways, I gave you guys the rundown on hats. Hat now. You know what to do.
Wild hat.
I love it. I love it.
Well, it doesn't have to be wild hat.
I love a good hat band. You're like hat man plug.
Yeah. So
also, I'll just say thank you, word of mouth guy.
And I'll definitely be wearing
Thanks,
this
homie.
in Greece. So
You're bringing it to Greece. Okay. Perfect. Heck yeah.
It can be sunny in Greece, so it can be very warm while you're there.
I hope so.
Amazing.
I hope it's a little warmer than colder while we're there. November, we'll see. I'm not off the top of my head. I don't know.
Yeah, the weather's supposed to be really good.
Okay, good.
Amazing.
In Egypt, it's Egypt and Greece are not that far from each other.
Yeah.
Egypt from October through January is like perfect weather.
Perfect. Yeah, 70s.
Yeah, 70s, maybe 80s at the high end, and Greece is not much cooler than Egypt. It can get blazing hot in Greece, so the weather's going to be perfect.
Amazing.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. You guys in chat, I hope to see you there. And Luke, man, thank you for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me on. I absolutely loved this conversation.
Yeah,
we got an extra hour out of you than we thought, so thank you for that.
It's fine. I was enjoying it too much. I was like, you know what? The work can wait. I'm really enjoying this conversation.
It was good,
well,
man.
thank you for staying.
Yeah, 100%. I can't wait to see the presentation in Sedona. That's going to be a really good weekend.
Yeah.
Well, now I have to make that presentation. I
Now
can't
you
just,
gotta
You've
make
got
it.
plenty of time.
yeah,
Just
I've
wait
got-
till the day before, like I would.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
don't have too much on your plate or anything to write an entire speech in the time.
yeah,
that you
yeah.
got.
You know, there's one aspect of it that I've already made that I was working on a while ago. One of my theories about the lotus flower in Egypt being like psychedelic, it's connected to the pre-dynastic precision vases or whatever. But I actually only made that connection because the Minoans were, let's say, around 1500 BC, are the most powerful ancient civilization in the Mediterranean. That's arguable with Egypt, but you know the Minoans might take the cake, at least for a century there or so. But the Minoans are fascinated by ancient Egypt, not 1500 BC Egypt, but like 3000 BC Egypt. The Minoans are interested in what was going on there, and we know that because we found pre-dynastic vases in the Minoan world. That's crazy. And then we find vases that are made out of stones that are native to Crete, which is the main island that the Minoans exist on in southern Greece. Vases that are made out of like serpentine, you know, the stones that are locally available that are trying to copy the form of the pre-dynastic vases. But Greeks themselves are a little bit more flamboyant, a little bit more, they show more, I guess I should say. Like the Egyptians are very minimalistic, sleek. They're kind of like the Apple Incorporated of the ancient world. Everything's just sleek and minimalistic, right? But the Greeks like to they're very artistic and they constantly like to innovate and change. So they have these bowls that are made out of granite, at which the granite is sourced from Egypt. But on these grinding bowls, they depict blue lotus flower leaves coming out of the bowl. Lotus flowers are only found in Egypt. So the Greeks are depicting what is happening in these bowls. They're grinding up the lotus flower and using it. And you can see like in Homer's Odyssey, which is calling back to, you know, the time just after the Minoans, maybe a little bit during the Minoans too, but you have them traveling to the land of the lotus eaters, and the lotus eaters exist on an island in North Africa that was connected to Egypt through Phoenician trade routes that are delivering lotus flowers to this island, and these people are consuming so many lotus flowers that they're becoming like lackadaisical and they don't want to go anywhere and they're like in this trance or whatever, you know. And so what I think is interesting here is I think the Minoan world is actually showing us that the Egyptian lotus flower that appears all across the Egyptian world is at least mildly psychedelic, right? And the Minoans were fascinated by that and we're showing that. So anyways, that's another, I've made part of the presentation and I'll probably throw that in it because I think it's pretty cool. But anywho.
That is cool.
Man, I could talk about stuff forever. You gotta check it out.
I'm gonna try some lotus
I love
flowers.
it. I have some.
Maybe,
You want?
maybe not anymore. What?
You got some on my? Yeah, I got some.
Ew.
Right on my shelf. You make tea out of it.
Yeah. Well, you know, this is actually a controversial thing. I swear to God, this is the last thing I'll say, but I have to say this. The Egyptian blue lotus flower from ancient times is extinct. It doesn't exist anymore.
I was going to say it's probably very different at this point.
Very different. They think that, well, I say very different. It's a 15% difference in the genetics between the modern day lotus flower and the ancient Egyptian lotus flower. It was such a hot commodity that they were picked clean across Egypt. I keep telling people this, and people keep telling me that I'm wrong. They're like, no, I call it such and such. No, they don't exist. The historical sources attest to this. They don't exist in 1500 AD.
Yeah.
They're gone. There are lotus flowers in Mexico, or blue lotuses like in Mexico and in Japan and other places around the world. And those are your modern day blue lotus flowers, but they don't have the same genetics as the Egyptian lotus. So we don't know for sure.
It's more psychoactive properties, probably, potentially. Yeah.
Smythe needs to get on that. They've been working on bud like it. They've been trying to find the cure for cancer for the last 20 years. That stuff is so strong. They could maybe work on the lotus flower, get it back.
Yeah, maybe Colossal needs to move into
the plants. Yeah, get that
maybe
going.
Move into what is the?
That would be cool.
What's the term of the people? Botany. They need to move into botany.
Yeah, get Mark Watney on it.
All right, I'm done.
Well, thank you, Luke.
Thank
We'll
you,
see
Luke.
you
You guys.
soon.
I really had a great time.
Thank
Same,
you.
man. And you got to
Same.
come back and see us again. We'd love to have you on.
Absolutely.
Yay.
Great to finally connect.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. Long overdue, but we'll make up for
I
it.
know. Yep. And I look forward to seeing you in May.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Couple weeks.
All right,
All right.
man. Take care.
All right.
Bye.
Thank all you guys for watching. Thank you guys for having me.
Thank you. Yay. That was fun.
That was awesome. That was a lot of stuff I just didn't really
Yeah.
know. And I haven't I haven't dove into ancient, Greece stuff like I should. But I haven't had a trip going there. And usually I try to read up on places before I go. So I've got that in my future this year.
Yeah.
And,
There's just so much to learn. It's
so much
never
to
ending.
Had a lot of fun, man. That was really cool.
Show
And
up.
like way overdue. And look forward to having them back on again. This is going to be a good year. We got the conferences, trips, the tours, a lot of fun stuff coming up. And yeah, man, that was really interesting. I thought people
Do we
knew
have
about
any?
the blue lotus flower, that was extinct. That's the one thing I did know tonight.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I don't know why it would be the same. I mean,
yeah, I read about somewhere,
genetically
that
the same.
people just liked it so much they picked it till extinction. People were getting high. People like to get high.
They've always liked to get high. If there's one thing that's true throughout history.
What else? We got anything else we need to share with everybody before we get out of here?
I think we covered it.
We did, didn't we?
I think we did.
Another successful stream.
Another success. We'll see y'all next week. Next Tuesday, we've got lots of amazing guests in the works as we're gearing up for the Quest conference. We're going to have all the speakers from the Quest conference. Some of them two at a time.
That's right.
So
yeah,
keep an eye
Might
out.
have some roundtable things going on where we have multiple people coming in and hanging out together. So I think you guys will like what we've got in store for you in the next month or two, month and a half.
Yes, be sure to follow our Wandering Wolf Live channel. We also have an Instagram up now. You can follow that for clips. And I think that's it.
And join us next week.
All
Thank
right.
you guys so much.
Thank you guys.
Peace.
Bye-bye. Oh.